I'm Dean Newland, and welcome to the Business of Intuition, where I coach, facilitate, train, and speak on the hard science and meaningful experience of intuitive leadership in business, so you can make better decisions, forge real connections, and creatively solve problems to amplify your impact and simplify your life. Welcome to the Business of Intuition.
Are we ready for the AI revolution in our work and education? Well, my next guest on the Business of Intuition is actually one of the pioneers in this revolution. And everywhere you go, you see information about how AI is going to be changing the way we do work. In fact, the September-October edition of the Harvard Business Review, the main title was Reskilling in the Age of AI. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not going away. ChatGPT is just the tip of the iceberg. And my next guest brought to light the transformative role of technology and AI in shaping our work and learning environments. He delved into the development of large language models like ChatGPT, emphasizing their potential to simplify work processes and boost efficiency across industry, most notably healthcare and project management. He talks about taking the grunt work away from work. While these AI promises enhanced efficiency, they also bring about a shift in how we interact with technology, moving from what he would call a traditional deterministic systems to a more probabilistic AI-driven approaches. The implementation of what he calls intelligent objects capable of natural language interaction proposes a future where software not only performs tasks, but, get this, understands and communicates autonomously. Though, let that one sink in a little bit. So much of the grunt work that we now have to ensure that our phones and our project management systems and all the stuff that runs our businesses could very well be done by the aid of these integrated ecosystems fueled by essentially a variation or an advanced variation of ChatGPT, where there's intelligence that's being shared back and forth without human beings having to do it. Now, in the realm of education, AI's impact is equally groundbreaking, and according to my guest. He thinks that we are going to be able to see things like personalized learning experiences, much like many healthcare organizations would propose that they are providing a personalized experience with your care provider, and that we would be adapting to an individual student needs much more so and their learning styles. This evolution towards AI-enhanced education, again, requires rethinking of the human/machine interface and the roles both play in the learning process. Now, does that mean that we don't have teachers anymore? Heck no, but teachers are going to be a lot more equipped with having tools that they never had before to be able to customize their approach to their students. Massoud Alibakhsh is a tech entrepreneur and with a background with electrical engineering and computer science. He's currently leading a task of creating the next generation of human and machine communication at Xeba Technologies. From 2000 to 2018, Massoud was founder, CEO, and chief architect of one of the first cloud-based medical practice management and electronic healthcare record systems, which is amazing that you would think how the practice of healthcare has changed over the years. Massoud Alibakhsh on the Business of Intuition. Massoud, it's great to have you on the show. I was thinking as we were, kind of getting brief with each other, getting to know each other a little bit, that I often ask leaders, what's their point of view with respect to their industry? And I know you've done some work in healthcare and so forth. And sometimes people struggle with that. They just think, well, I'm all about the job. I'm all about the work. I'm all about the technology. And I'm trying to get them to step back and go, yeah, I get that. But what's your philosophy? What do you believe is possible within the industry in which you work? And how are you willing to take a stand to make that happen? And when people start to identify that, then there's a certain amount of power and focus that comes to play, and people want to follow that kind of power and focus. So I'm going to ask you the same question. What is your point of view these days regarding technology and specifically AI, since it is such an important part and huge disruptor in what's going on right now in society? And I know that you are big in that. What's your point of view when it comes to all of this?
Well, I mean, in short, I'm an engineer. I build things, and uh, but not aimlessly. I aim to make life easier for humans, for people, for us. And I think technology needs to be at our service. And I would go out and claim that people really shouldn't have much to fear from AI. I mean, just like any new technology, there's a lot of unknowns, obviously, and it's new to a lot of people. But there's really not much to be afraid of. And AI is a very promising technology, and it's going to really remove the burden of the drudgery aspect of what we call work out of work. So that's the ultimate promise that it has, at least in the short run. I mean, there's lots of other discussions about AI and, existential questions and whether
which we might get into. But if we remove some of the drudgery, work, what is it that allows us to do more of? I know some people
allows us to be.
We can be more creative. We can have more meaningful relationship. But what is your point of view on that?
I agree with that, and then that's a kind of a general way of putting it. The path to removing the drudgery is not clear, and this is actually something I would like to get into, because we could talk about what is happening overall in the AI world, and I have an analogy that I equate. It's the AI overall to the transportation industry. It's like you have trucks, you have trains, you have sedans. These are different types of technologies that have been developing over the years. But all of a sudden now, with the ChatGPT and a few nice events that occurred over the last couple of years, a brand new sedan with amazing gas mileage and no noise, no pollution has shown up. If you can kind of take that analogy, and it surprised everybody because we didn't think we would be here this quickly. And that's the ChatGPT. If your audiences have dealt with ChatGPT, they know what I'm talking about. It's it's a type of AI that's referred to as large language model, LLMs, and the fascinating aspect of these tools, at least from my perspective, is that they, for the first time, they understand natural language perfect. And the second part of it is they can understand you and they can try to attempt to answer your questions. And the way ChatGPT basically was modeled is, you can imagine it to be a vacuum cleaner that was connected to the internet. It sucked all the words and it just consumed everything, and it compressed everything into this ball of knowledge. And when you kind of give it a prompt and you're tickling that engine, and it spits out the relevant knowledge that you're inquiring. And, most of the time it's giving you accurate knowledge and information. Sometimes it hallucinates. This is at least that's the technical term. I call it confident bullshitting. But that actually is, it's kind of like, we humans do that too.
I know some people who do that pretty well too.
Yeah. Well, but the thing is that the problem with the generative part of these large language models is that it's the aspect of they're not reliable. So that's actually what has been a point of interest to me as an engineer, because we engineers, we build things that are predictable. That engineering systems have to be predictable. They are what we refer to as deterministic machines. Whereas these large language models are probabilistic machines. They're extremely useful, as we can see. Like a lot of the teenagers figured out how useful it is by generating their homeworks early on in the early days. But if you work with them, they're just amazing tools. They're helping us write better programs. They're helping people write better emails. That you can feed a document to it and say, summarize this, give me the highlights. So because human knowledge is encapsulated in words, they're extremely useful for the first time, that you can push natural language in it and interact with these machines using natural language.
Let me ask you if I could. I think most people, not everybody, understands ChatGPT right now. Here we are in December of 2023. I just came from Chicago, and I was asking a bunch of construction engineers how many people knew it, and maybe about half of them did. but it's getting to be more ubiquitous, although new. Where do you see all this going? I mean, you have a program, I think, called Amadeus. What's the next flashy vehicle, using your analogy, that's coming down the pike that we should be aware of and maybe even start preparing for?
Okay, so the technology we've developed, it's kind of unique, where the industry as a whole is working on these large language models, which are based on the neural network technology. And the way they work is you feed them a lot of data, you give them a lot of computational power. The more computational power, the more data you give them. They're referred to as parameters. The smarter they become, and they can solve all kinds of problems. And as they scale that. So the industry is basically saying, let's do more of this. And by the way, let's figure out how to make it more safe or more predictable, because sometimes it produces these answers that are very confidently produces them, but they're obviously wrong if you're an expert in the field. So the industry is focused on that. Our technology, our approach is saying, no, look, we look at traditional programming, where the software that we've been building, that's a different kind of technology. It's a different kind of intelligence, actually. It's more predictable. It's more deterministic. The model we've come up with is how to combine these two together. So how do you combine, basically get the deterministic part that is very predictable, have that control this probabilistic engine, basically. So you can have a fully predictable result. As a result, that means that your accounting software becomes super smart. Your electronic medical record becomes unbelievably smart, not just this rigid place, this screen place. It'll be an intelligent electronic medical record. Or, for example,
so if I could, let's just take the electronic medical record. What would be different? How would it be smarter?
Okay, that's a good. Okay, so how would it be?
Let's get into so I love the theory of it, but give me the practical. I'm a patient going into my patient portal, and it's got obviously the newer versions that you just described, where I'm a physician who's entering in information about a particular patient I just met with. What's different that we don't have now that you're describing?
Okay, so what we have now is basically the automation of the physical process that was basically invented in the early 1900s. And we started automating that in the 1960s. And by 1900, I mean the invention of the assembly line. And that assembly line allowed a large number of humans to come together and build sophisticated machines. Now, we basically abstracted the assembly line and called it workflow. And workflow is this multi-dimensional, really complex assembly line that runs into 15 floors of a big building with lots of professionals, with PhDs and master's degrees and accountants and doctors. And so we're connected together through these workflows. Now, we had physical processes. We wrote stuff on a piece of paper, and then we handed it from one person to another. But the computer showed up and said, give me those pieces of paper and let me stick them on the screen. And it just facilitates a lot of communication. It makes it easier, and that we're stuck with that model. And these forms that are on screen, they're dumb. And so today you go to the doctor's office, somebody takes, your blood pressure, they go and punch that on a form on the screen and save that. And that's your, temperature, your blood pressure. And then the doctor in another room basically looks that information up and he reads. Or somebody takes an X-ray and saves that X-ray in your medical record, and the doctor comes up and the X-ray shows up and the doctor is looking at the X-ray. So it's really facilitating of that data. And so each person has a particular screen, and, the engineer takes the X-ray, saves that screen. The doctor shows up in his office. He sees his own screen. He sees your blood temperature, your heart pressure, and here's the X-ray. Right. That's the current model. It's shuffling data around in a very, what I would say, dumb way. But it's the physical process that's been automated. Now,
that's the way it is now. That's the way it has.
It is now. Okay.
So that I think we all can agree.
It's the beginning of automation. Now,
what's the 2.0 version?
2.0 version, if you use our technology, the technology that we are proposing, which is called object messaging and intelligent object, it's a completely different way of architecting software, embedding large language models inside every aspect of that software. Here's
and again, large language models is another acronym or basically a way of saying ChatGPT, but in a more engineered speak.
Right.
Got it. Okay.
That's
I want to make sure that
ChatGPT is the brand, like Ford, Ford or whatever. But they're all in internal combustion engine, So it's a large language model it refers to that. ChatGPT is just another brand. There are a few number of, Facebook has got its own large language
Amazon,
model. Amazon, and everybody's going to come up. Now, let's go back to the doctor scenario. Okay, I'm the engineer. I'm the technician who takes the X-ray. The patient shows up. I take the X-ray. I save the X-ray. The X-ray knows that I took it. Now, this X-ray there's no longer just a dumb little film. There's a large language model attached to it. It can communicate with everyone using natural language. It also has memory, just like a person. It has segmented memory. We have memories that we keep track of everything that happens to us. If I go and talk to my mother, I keep that information in a separate area. When I go talk to my wife, I keep that information in a separate area. The interactions that happen with her. So if we're at a party, so we segment that. So that X-ray has a memory similar to that. The X-ray is intelligent because it can keep track of its stakeholders. It knows that I took the X-ray. It's been programmed by the programmers to identify itself. And this is what we do traditionally, because when the designers designed it, saying, whenever you're an X-ray, okay, if you're a chest X-ray, you need to use this address on the internet that is Mayo Clinic's chest X-ray reader engine. That's another AI. Go over there, fly over there, over the network, and give it this permission token that'll allow you to get in, and then go feed yourself. Get the output, which is in English, then read it and understand it. And if you've got these issues with you, go immediately show yourself up to the doctor. So this X-ray is taken, chest X-ray, feeds itself to that model of the network. The output comes in. It has an LLM, just like an individual. It's an intelligent object. It reads it. It says, oh, darn, I'm cancerous. I fly immediately to Dr. Dean's inbox, shows up, hey, I'm cancerous, hello. So, and then you go, well, I don't, okay, well, let's see. You open up the box, says, oh, I see, there's the report. And the report is attached. The report is not in some file, somebody carrying it. That X-ray carries the actual report. The X-ray manages all the information about itself, everything, just like an individual. Now, actually, that's inspired from biology. I'm going to segue, and I'm going to come back to the story to see how interesting it is. In the back of our brain, there's not a little file folder that keeps track of information about a cell in your liver. The liver cell is intelligent. It's self-contained. It knows everything about itself. It knows that it's a cell liver. It functions like a cell. It knows its neighbors. It communicates with its neighbors. The collection of those cells make a liver. The liver is an intelligent component. It's a super component. It knows it's a liver. It communicates with the rest of the system using veins, arteries, and neural networks, that the nerves that connect it to the rest of the components, to your kidneys, to your lungs, to your brain. So that is an intelligence, that's a collection of intelligent systems. But when I talk to you, I don't talk to your liver. I talk to the top LLM that you have, and we communicate using natural language, right? But then you communicate, and your brain communicates to your liver and whatnot. They in their own language. The model we're suggesting is that if you rebuild these systems, let's go back to the X-ray. So the X-ray shows up in your inbox, says, I'm cancerous. And so, why is that? It's like, here's a report I just got out of this engine in Mayo Clinic, and I've highlighted all the areas for you. Just quickly look at it. And, okay, by the way, Dr. Dean, I know you're just the primary doctor, and I know this is a special cancer, and I identified in the network based on my programming. Part of our network, Dr. Jones, he's in another clinic in Boston. He's a specialist. I talked to his appointment object, cleared the next 2 minutes, set up a call. And by the way, you had another appointment, but I looked at it. It was just a regular visit, but this is a clear one. So I had your appointment object, shuffle that appointment, and we have a call in 2 minutes. By the way, here it is. Let me connect you guys. Boom. Now you're talking to Dr. Jones.
So it would speed up the whole process of getting access for patients to get to their care providers. Yeah. And what we might call the administrative shuffle of making all these appointments happen and connecting all this data together is taken out. supplanted by, in a sense, technology. Am I correct?
All the drudgery of that work is removed, and the intelligent X-ray has been programmed as an object. But that the X-ray knows that it's part of the visit. X-ray knows that its sister is that blood test. It's part of the visit. They may have done a blood test. They may have done a bunch of other stuff. But that becomes a super component like your liver. And each one of those objects are intelligent. We can build that technology today using LLM and traditional logic. Okay. And that's the architecture that we propose. And we call that object messaging and intelligent. And
is that the same thing as Amadeus? If I go to your website, or the name of what you're talking about?
That's right. And Amadeus actually is a project management tool built based on this model, because every software needs to be rewritten, right?
So I love the analogy regarding the healthcare situation, and I love you being able to sort of think about this very system-wise and holistically. You know, that the cell knows what it is and how it connects and communicates to all the other cells. It doesn't need anybody else to communicate for it. It's doing it itself. And that's what that's the analogy you're creating. By the way, I always thought this is like conversation. This is parenthetic to what we were talking about. Years ago, I remember being over at Mayo Clinic and they were saying, radiologists, guess what, friends? You're probably, those of you who are sitting in those rooms for hours on end, in those reading the charts, your days are probably numbered. And I think what you're saying is that technology is going to be reading these charts versus human beings. Am I correct?
Well, that's already happening, actually. Yeah. Today, you can, as a doctor, the X-ray is taken, you can print that, or you can somehow digitally email that to the Mayo Clinic. The Mayo Clinic will take that digital form, and then amongst all the emails or whatever they got, when it's your turn, they feed it to that, and they get that natural report and attach it to it, email it back to your office. And whenever the nurse, whoever has got that, and you print it and you start reading it, see, that is a lot of administrative work. Whereas in the case that we're talking, the X-ray has all the intelligence. The X-ray knows that this is this program that what's its program. It feeds itself to the engine in Mayo Clinic over the network, but it reads the report. It understands that it's cancerous. Then it knows immediately it needs to come to you, and it knows that, okay, based on my programming, you're just a primary doctor, but we're allowed to kind of get a specialist. And I set up that phone conference, and you guys are sitting there talking just like this, but I, as the X-ray, I'm sitting there listening. Watch.
Yes.
And by the way, I'll record that video for you and I'll keep it in my back pocket so you don't have to store it in some folder. And 6 months later, when I show up in your box for whatever reason, you're busy, you got all kinds of stuff happening. It's like, what are you? It's like, well, on that X-ray, you don't remember. You had a conference with Dr. Jones about this. And by the way, this is what you said about me. Would you like to see that 5 seconds of that video? Like, here it is. Like, I recall it from my memory and I'll show it to you. And you can interact with it using natural language, because that is the whole magic of the large language models. So you've created this object that's an X-ray that has structured data that defines it, and it keeps channels of communication of people talking to each other, but it holds that communication. It understands that because it's natural language, because it understands natural language.
All right, so let me, because I know if I just let you go, you're going to go off for a long time on anything. So I interrupt every once in a while. So I apologize because you're so passionate. I love it. So translate this into a non-medical environment, something that is more common for people. Like, for example, some organizations work with Workday or other types of, integrated project management systems to be able to connect HR's work with payroll, with, all of these different components that it takes to run a mid to large size business. How would your particular process enhance that?
Well, we're going to go through a kind of a transition phase, because what we've done traditionally, we've been based on these form-based models that are very rigid, and we've automated these paper forms, right? So all these software, the ones you mentioned, they may have some cute user interfaces, and they've maybe rearranged these forms in interesting ways, and they've given it shapes and forms and folders and trash cans and lights that flash, but They're still those dead forms. They're not intelligent. Okay, And so we're going to have to go through a transition phase, which is going to be a complex transition phase. But I'm going to relate this to an average audience. Okay. So here's what's the application of. So what do you do with this thing when you first log in, right? When you first
for those of you we're actually audio. So what he's holding up is a phone, an iPhone, or maybe an Android.
Yeah, that's right, an Android. So first thing is when you get in, you're going to have to decide which app to use, right?
Correct.
So let's say I'm hungry, so I click on my diet app. And I look at them and see, I had the fish yesterday in my diet app. I have to navigate through it. So you click through it it says I should have chicken. And then, I got to order myself some chicken. How much money do I have? I click on my budget app to see. Yeah. So I'm navigating around trying to figure out where. So I, as a human, I know what I want to do. I'm hungry and I want to just eat some food, right? And I have my desires. Now I have to go through and figure out how to navigate, workflow through all these apps. Fast forward to the object messaging intelligent object, and we can build that for you today. That technology, what we're proposing using the chat GPT type of language. And if we re-architect these apps using our architecture, here's the scenario. I hold the phone up and I say, I'm hungry. And it comes up and says, well, your diet app says you had fish yesterday and you can eat chicken. And by the way, here's like 3 choices. The chicken McNugget and Kentucky Fried Chicken and another type of fast food chicken. And I'm looking on the screen. I'm going, wait a minute. I want something fancier. What is this? I'm not going to eat fast food. So we can't afford anything fancier. We don't have that in the budget. Well, what budget? Oh, it is. Look, flowers, and I can see on the screen, $50, $10 lunch, $15 for transportation. Go, whoa. Flowers, $50? Like, yeah, it's your girlfriend's birthday next week. No. Take $10, $50 off of that and put it on my lunch and give me some other options. Okay, you have 25. Here's 3 new options. These are fancier. Give me the second one. Okay, I'm calling Uber for you because it's a little far. And okay, and everything's
does it all for you.
Yeah, that's right. That's the difference. Okay, the difference is that now the users are removed from the drudgery of navigating through these apps, and so the intel, similar to a movie called Her, which came out about 10 years ago.
Movie. That was a great movie.
And it was a fantastic movie. And so now that's the ideal that we're trying to push through, and that's the technology. Now in the workplace, if this object messaging and intelligent object architecture is implemented in any software, that software becomes intelligent, and the humans connect to that software, and they don't have to worry about routing information. They don't have to. They become, if you're a project manager, for example, in our system, the Amadeus is a project management system. If you're a salesperson, you just come in and your customer asks you, I want this XYZ feature. I want to like this red button that flashes 3 times on the screen, whatever that. You just come in there and you just create that object and you say, hey, this is a feature request and whatever. And you describe it and it knows that you created it. That becomes an intelligent object. And it flows directly to the triage area in the inbox of the project manager, and pops up, says, here I am. This is a request, and you could read the specification that it was written, and you can say, no, this is not. And the sales guy says it's high priority. You're looking at all your tasks. You go, no. I'm just going to bring the priority too low. And by the way, I'm going to push it off to a month later. I'm busy. Go away to my backlog. Guess what? The minute you do that, that object comes back to me as a sales guy and says, hey, I got news for you. Like, what is it? Like, well, Dean put me in the backlog for a month and he lowered my priority. So what? Wait a minute. No, Dean, I start talking to the object, or I actually click on the button and say, let's have a conference call, the 2 of us. And you pick it up and you're chatting and the object is listening. And so, no. And we don't agree. And say, okay, we don't agree. Guess what? I'm just going to tell the object, go tell my boss. I just mentioned my boss saying, hey, I've got $1 million sales based on this. And that object all of a sudden shows up in front of my boss and says, hey, my boss is busy. He doesn't pay attention to stuff and says, what do you want? Oh, this is a sales guy. And ask the object saying, there's a whole lot of conversation in here. Just summarize it. Give me the highlight.
Yeah.
Says, sales guy, boom, 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 boom. And I go, wait a minute. So So this is how the intelligent object becomes the gopher, the intelligent butler. And it knows the workflow. It knows where to go. It knows the stakeholders, right? It keeps all the information itself.
So let me interrupt again. Sorry. So I've often thought that the people who really run a business today and probably yesterday were the admins. This sounds like very disruptive for administrative assistant, meaning that the role that they had played in the past may be gone based on the technology you're suggesting. Why would we need a secretary, administrative assistant, a VA, if we have all of this?
Well, it's hard, Dean. It's hard to predict exactly what functions are going to get. But what's going to happen if you just kind of from a high level point of view, if you think about the technology and the workflow automation inside an organization to be the nervous system of that organization, and humans are attached as intelligent nodes to the end of these nervous systems. We humans are not good at routing information. We can't scale because that's why email is such a disaster. It promised to be a panacea, but it became a Pandora's box. Because if there are three of us in a company and we make chairs and, I cut the wood, you nail it, and somebody else paints it, email works. Because if I have information about paint, I want something red, okay, I'll just send it to Joe. If it's about nailing it, I'll send it to D. But the minute we're 4, 5, 6 people, now every human has to process the information and figure out how to route it.
Right.
Not only routing it, but also route it in time. Because I may have information that I know I got to send it to you, but I sit on it for 10 minutes. And then now all of a sudden, I've got a traffic jam. Imagine companies, with hundreds of people. That's why we've experimented with email. We went to things like Slack and Microsoft Teams, and those solve some of the problem, but actually they complicate it because they can't really map the workflow. Now, I won't get into that. I've actually written a paper on this called the workflow-based automation, which is really the other side of AI. And that was published by IEEE a couple of years ago. And it's about optimizing the workflow communication. And as it turns out that you need AI to do it, but you need to change your model of communication and you need to go back to the software. See, right now, you have information in email, you have information in Microsoft Teams or Slack, and you have information in the software. So if I, as a sales guy, came in and I had a nice order, I had to go to our software and write in, we need 50 of these and the radio of this type and 2 of them red, and I save the button. You save, and then I know it goes into the order area. But I just go to my email and say, hey, Joe, this is a very important order. I got you. I'll buy a drink or whatever if you cover this. And by the way, it's important now because natural language is how we carry a lot of subtle information. But traditional software carries information in structured fashion, right? So it's really the model we're presenting saying, look, keep the traditional software, but turn them into intelligent objects, just like the biological body. Identify all those critical entities and make them smart about themselves, make them self-aware, and give them an LLM so they can talk to humans, but also to each other. So these objects can talk to each other, no more with APIs. They can talk using natural language. So that way you have this flexibility of changing your code all the time. And I, as a programmer, don't have to tell you, well, my API changed. No, this object is intelligent. Your objects can talk to it using natural language. Your system becomes a collection of intelligent objects, just like our bodies. That, like, for example, in our system, all these features and all these bugs that get bundled together as what's called a sprint. And sprint is an agile form of development. It just matches the model. It's like a package that you develop in 1 week. And the collection of these packages, all of them together, make the project object. And the project object is aware of everything that's happening. I can talk to the project object and say, hey, what happened to you? So it says, yeah, I had these 5 sprints. Or I could say, look, what's holding you back? And that project object sends the message to all the sprints. The sprint will send the message to all their children, all features and bugs, and all the ones that are problematic, they follow up to the top. And then the big project says, hey, I got this feature that's holding back, and I got these 3 bugs that are waiting. And this is why, James is so slow on working on this issue. So the project basically is this big brain, and then they communicate in a hierarchical fashion, similar to the biological body, right? Where the message from the brain goes in the different ways. Liver, yeah, that's right.
Let me ask you one more question here, because we could take 2 or 3 podcasts to get through all of this. I know this episodes. How is this going to, I know, right? How is this going to change education? When we have kids going to school or we have young adults going to college, how is this going to radically affect the way in which we learn and adapt? Because I know that we've talked to some higher education organizations and they're making this a big deal. Certainly, as we all know, that, it used to be the days when you could be afraid about the fact that ChatGPT or something very to that would, write papers for these kids and plagiarism would be the issue. Now, I think organizations are leading into it and are trying to teach people how to ask better prompts and so forth. But how is this in general going to change education?
I think it's going to make education, really the impact is going to be amazing. Where in the traditional educational system, I have always had problems with that. My kids used to come home and say, we hate school. And, I had kind of small argument with my wife because she would always say, no. And I said, well, why shouldn't they hate school? I hated school. You just go in there in a room, sit there with 20 other kids, and then you listen to some, adult just yak for an hour, like blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, that's not fun, and, you're sitting there, they're talking at the same level to 40 different humans or 20 different humans, different interests, different talents, different way of absorbing information, different type of focus, different type of attitude, background, and how they felt that day. You're going to have custom teachers for each student, patient to the nth degree.
Will we still have live human beings teaching, or will this all be virtual?
I think we're going to there's going to be the transition phase. We're going to basically make these AI machines that are kind of collaborative initially.
With humans.
With humans, of course. I think humans are always going to be involved because at the end of the day, it's about humans, right? It's I won't get into the philosophical part of it, but that's a big discussion.
Different
another podcast. Yeah. Different episode. But I very quickly I tell you, we're really part of an evolutionary chain, and human manifest destinies to give rise to the next species, and that's what we're doing. And the next species is not going to be just a machine; it's going to be augmented human. And just like this phone augments me, but the interface is clunky. Right now, and I'm describing a better type of interface. We just talk to it, natural language, right?
Right.
But ultimately, what Elon Musk is kind of envisioning is maybe even through our neurons, we get connected to it, and just so. And what's the difference? What's the difference between that and sitting in a car and driving? I mean, I'm not running. Is the car me? Is it that a human? A lot of people actually, when they get behind the car, they change completely. That's it's the attitude changes.
Yeah,
that's right. But then you're still a human. The human is there. No, even with the self-driving, you're still a human sitting in the car. The car doesn't have anywhere to go by itself. It's you who wants to go somewhere. So does that mean the human is useless just because you sit in the car now you get to just enjoy the view, not be stressed about driving, and the number of accidents are going to go to zero. That's the future of AI automation in every company. Because
all right, so let's do it then. Let's do this. Let's leave it at that because I'm running out of time here. But it's a great ending. Let me just ask one final question as we tie off here. How can people connect with you? You mentioned your paper. You talked about this platform, Amadeus. Just give us some basics about how to connect with you.
We actually, if you're interested in this technology, we're doing free webinars on a bi-weekly basis, and we talk about the technology, the object messaging, how to program these things, how to kind of have a different way of writing programs. And www.omadeus.com is the website. There's lots of resources there. There are a lot of prior podcasts of different types I've done. And you can actually sign up and get access to the papers that I've written that are actually published by IEEE. That will really kind of educate and inform people about the depth of this technology.
Fantastic. Really, a really interesting topic, very timely. I feel like we're at a precipice of a tremendous change. You mentioned back in the 1900s when we were getting involved with automation, and we reminded of, I think was it Winslow Taylor, was sort of the father of of modern management. I think we're going through another one of those major transitions in terms of how we do work and how we work together in work, and education is going to change. It's obviously a huge shift, but so much appreciate your energy and insights. And
can I add one comment? One comment is to people out there is it's actually, they should be excited about it, because this new machine, the expertise that you need is your own personality and your inquisitiveness, because you can interact with it using natural language. It's not complicated with all the coding and whatnot. You can become an expert on this thing better than a lot of other programmers by just examining and interacting with these tools and understanding their personality and figuring out how to get what you want out of them.
Well said. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to The Business of Intuition. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, rate, and review on Apple Podcasts, Google, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you'd like to learn more about Dean or Mission Facilitators Leadership, go to mfileadership.com. That's mfileadership.com.